Hi, this is Manos Brilakis from the Minneapolis Art Institute, presenting on a topic that is a little unusual. It's not the typical high-risk intervention or different techniques, but a topic that is much more universal, which is an approach to how we manage our time. I recently gave this presentation for the SKY 2018 meeting at the ELM session, and I was fascinated because many people asked to see the slides and hear about this presentation, many more than were interested in the complex coronary intervention, which speaks to how universal there is a need for tools and ways to optimize how we manage time. There are many things that pull on our time. We have several duties and roles and responsibilities. This can be clinical, can be educational and scholarly, can be personal. At the same time, keep a functioning body, exercising, and of course everyone says you should have fun at everything you do. And the question is, how can you do it all, or can you do it all? And we should start from the basics, which is that there is only so much time during the day. There are 24 hours in a day, and there are 7 days in a week, which amounts to 168 hours per week. That's all the time there is, and that's the same for everyone on the planet. You cannot change that, but we can optimize how you use that. Here is a basic attempt on trying to see where the time goes, and these are some of the things that are pretty robust and have to happen. Sleeping 7 hours a day, eating, exercising, commuting, working 8 hours a day, which might be an understatement for many of us, spending some time with family. If we add all those, this is 139 hours, leaving a pretty significant number of 29 hours that many things could happen in this time. But this is of course different, and one way to figure out how each one of us spends the time is to actually use a week to document what happens during each part of the day, to decide if there are some parts where time is quote-unquote wasted that can be potentially improved. Randy Pausch was an engineer who found out that he only had a few months to live, and he used those few months to educate the rest of us about how to live a better life, and optimizing use of time and avoiding time wasting was a big priority for him. There are many ways to waste time. For example, having a messy desk and cluttered files when we cannot find things as a result of that, missing appointments, doing things that other people should be doing, and being tired and unable to concentrate even during those times where we're supposed to be most productive. Therefore, there is a need for managing our time. And according to Wikipedia, time management is the process of planning and exercising conscious control of time spent on specific activities to increase effectiveness, efficiency, or productivity, which is a title that is very similar to the goals of the hybrid approach to chronic total occlusion intervention, the goal of which is to be more effective, efficient, and safe doing CTO interventions. Planning is at the core of time management, and planning can be broken down into three basic steps. One is to decide where you want to go. The second is evaluate different routes. And third is decide on the action you're going to take to reach the destination you've decided on. Wikipedia breaks down time management to three key elements, which is number one, creating an effective environment. Second, set your priorities. And third, carry out activities around those areas of priorities. And we can all boil this down into two basic components. One is to get more efficient. If we can get things done faster, then we can achieve more things within a unit of time. The second component is to actually do less. There is so much time, we can only do so many things, even if we become super efficient. And the key there is to be able to do the things that are a priority, that are the most important, so that we can achieve those instead of less important things. End of the day, time management revolves around two key concepts, which is planning and doing, and there is a constant interaction between the two. Two bottom lines: get more efficient or do less. Pareto illustrates the importance of doing the right thing. The Pareto principle says that 80% of the results come out of 20% of the actions. So choosing to focus on these 20% of actions that produce most results can make us potentially more effective in the things we want to do. Starting with making a more effective environment. How can this be done? By getting organized and protecting the time but avoiding interruptions. And these are some components for having an effective environment. The first one is to actually have a list of the things that we committed to and we want to do that is complete and up to date. And we'll go in detail in this later on. This is a big part of the getting things done concept by David Allen. The second thing on the office is to have a functioning office with fast computers, fast internet, headsets, and other components. The third part is to have ourselves in the best possible shape through sleep, exercise, diet, meditation, and discipline. Having a social network which not only helps us get things done, but also can act as a source of motivation. And finally, limiting disruptions, both self-inflicted and disruptions by others. There are many ways to have lists. I personally use Microsoft OneNote, which is a free software, synchronizes between different platforms on the cell phone and the computer, and is fairly easy to use and free, but everyone can have things to do. The second is to creating a clean, clutter-free office. You can obviously not be very effective in this environment. You'd much rather operating from this desk in the morning, arriving at work, versus having this desk and trying to sort through the pile of mess. There is the concept of having a zero inbox, for which I admit I'm not there yet myself, but I'm trying to make my way, which says that you should always try to empty your inbox at the end of the day, move the emails into the list, decide on the things you want to do, and move the other emails into different folders, so you don't have to sort through the same emails again and again that you haven't acted on. I am personally a firm believer of having a huge screen, ideally two huge screens, such as this 43-inch monitor. Having more screen makes working so much easier, effective, and productive, because you don't need to close windows and open windows. You can do everything in this one big space, and you can see that when you are forced to work on your desktop or your laptop and you have only a small screen, you're much less productive and able to get things done. Speakerphone is very important, because sometimes you have to be on some conference calls that drag for very long, and having free hands allow us at the same time to search and participate more effectively. Having a scanner helps convert the paper into digital form that can be sorted and found much easier than the paper itself. This, of course, now can be done quite often just using a cell phone and various applications. We should not forget the importance of a pen and paper. I personally find it much more useful to write my thoughts down on pen and paper and try to sketch and decide the various things I want to do. And having access to this at all times helps us jot down any ideas we get, which sometimes happen at times that we're not in our office or in another environment where it's ready for taking notes. So having the ability, taking a note either on pen and paper or on your cell phone, can be useful for not missing those sometimes important ideas that may not come back. Keeping the files organized is critical. I personally have all my files in a large USB drive and actually back everything up online. And having this with me essentially changes the computer from a storage tool to just an execution tool. And any computer will work, and therefore that's much less dependent on the actual particular computer. Everything is online and on a file. In that way it can be secured, and if something happens, they're easily to be retrieved. How about ourselves? There is increasing emphasis on getting enough sleep. When we don't get enough sleep, we get irritable, our performance goes down, and there are other health consequences. Of course, there's always a struggle between sleeping enough and getting things done, but being well rested does have a significant impact on what one can do. Exercising also helps actually generate energy. Exercising makes us more awake, alert, and be able to function better. We are what we eat. I like to joke, I was recently in Florida and saw the green turtles, and the reason the green turtles are green is because they eat algae that are green. So we're literally what we eat, and the foods we eat actually become ourselves down the line. The environment is also social. There is environment at work, there are various professional organizations, there are family networks, the church. There are many different networks that can be tremendous for optimizing both effectiveness and efficiency, and as well as serve as a source of motivation. Nothing can be done unless there's some discipline, setting some goals and following through. But also limiting interruptions is important. Unlike what we often think, we cannot do many things at once. There is this myth of multitasking, but in reality, we can only do one thing at a time. And if we get interrupted, then it takes quite some time to get back in the mind of frame of doing the thing we were originally doing in the first place. There are many forms of interruptions, self-inflicted or not, texts, emails, Twitter, Facebook. Of course, there are some interruptions that are important and take priority over everything else, such as getting paid for a patient issue. TV is one common interruption. I have been feeling the same way as David Allen, who says that I can resist everything except for temptation. The reality is, having a TV, it's amazing how it can grab our attention and waste lots and lots of time. I've been fortunate having had a TV for the last 21 years, and I do believe it is important to minimize it as much as possible. So in summary, by doing all these potential concepts, the goal and the end result is to have at any given time a clear head, a clean and functioning environment with tools that are ready to use. All the files are available, pen and paper, computers. At the same time, we feel energized and well rested. We have a social network and feel connected and supported, but at the same time, we limit the number of interruptions. And through all this, we do get motivated and inspired. And it is true that when we feel that things are in order, we're much more likely to take on new and more important things than when everything feels like a blur and we're not sure what exactly are the loose ends on the things we want to do. Which brings us to the second part, which is deciding what actually we want to be doing, setting priorities. Once again, we can only do so many things, and it's important to decide what is the priority, what is the important thing for us. Wikipedia does give several methods for deciding what the priority is. Is money the priority? We are fortunate in medicine that we can have a good income and not have to worry about this too much. But what is known is that more money doesn't equal more happiness. People had the same level of happiness despite an increasing income over many, many years. Helping others is key. And again, in medicine, we're fortunate because our job's main goal is exactly that, to do the best we can do for our patients. As Morris says, giving is living. And the same is reflected into Steve Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. What is the end goal is to live, love, learn, and leave a legacy. This is some of the key human needs that give satisfaction and become a priority. One way to find what is important is to do the so-called living funeral, which is a funeral held for us even before we die. This is one way to actually think about what we would like people to say about us when we die before we actually die, so we actually have time to do something about the things that we would like to do. Is happiness the goal? Although many people say that this is the goal, the reality is that it may more be a byproduct and not actually a goal. Maybe the byproduct of achieving things that are important to us and helping others as well. What is the most important thing is not the same at different times in life. And there is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs that says that we have different levels of needs. And to go to the next level, we have to satisfy the initial needs for safety, food, water, security, friendship, self-esteem, eventually going to the peak trying to accept facts, solve problems, be more creative and spontaneous. So there are going to be different needs and different priorities during the life, but it's important to be in sync with what those priorities are. And one way to think about them is in the Eisenhower chart, which clarifies or classifies things according to how important they are and how urgent they are. And the quadrant we would like to spend most of our time is the quadrant of non-urgent and important items. This is preventing, planning, recognizing new opportunities, build relationships. This is what we spend most of our time, and we should spend not time at all, if we can, on urgent but non-important, such as interruption, email, and some meetings. We cannot do it all. Sometimes things can be too much, and the way to balance out is to remove some of the things that we want to do. And the way to do this is by sometimes saying no. This is a tough one because we want to be perceived as being able to deliver things. We want to be open and hardworking. And what we say no to changes over time, but the reality is if we say yes to everything, in reality we're saying no to many other things that might be even more important for us. By saying no to some things, then we'll have the mental power and the actual physical time to pursue the things that are most important, even though some of those things may be hard to achieve. Focusing on what is important may help us overcome those brick walls, according to Ratty Paus, which actually help us prove if we really want something or not. And going on to the third component, which is we have a good environment, we decided where we want to go, how do we actually get where we want to go? And for this, I'm a big proponent of the Getting Things Done methodology developed by David Allen, and I would encourage everyone to read the GDD book, which breaks the process of actually doing things in 5 steps. The first step is capture, everything that has our attention. Second, clarify, understand what it means. Third is to organize it in different ways so we can act on it. Fourth is review it frequently so we're up to date, understand what our commitments and things to do are. And fifth, get things done, which is the end result. The first step in this process is the collect, which means get all of these random inputs, all the things that we're asked to do, our emails, our phones, our letters, the physical environment, trying to get it all collected and written down so we know what exactly and completely is in our plate at any given period of time. So collecting all this into an in-basket or some form of physical gathering is important to understand what exactly is in our plate. There are many ways to decide whether they're incomplete things, and they're incompletion trigger list that is important to reflect through once in a while, ideally once a week, to see if we are in good shape in different parts of life. The second part, once you clarify the different things that are potentially things for us to do, is to clarify what they mean. And the key question that needs to be asked is whether those items are actionable or not. Is there an action needed or not? If not, then sometimes we'll throw them away, sometimes we'll revisit them in the future, and sometimes we file them as reference material. But if there is an action, then the next question is, what is the next thing we're supposed to do? And if the next step takes less than 10 minutes, it's actually best to get it done right away, because it will take more time to organize it and revisit it than just getting it out of the way immediately. If it needs more than 2 minutes, then the next question is, should we be the ones doing this, or can we delegate to someone else? And if we can, then we delegate. But if we cannot, then the question is, where can you do it? And this goes into 2 placeholders. One is on the calendar, if this action is to happen on a specific time frame, or it goes in a next to-do list if there's no specific time component to it. So doing this process, the different inputs and the things to do are clarified and tied to a next action for following through. Delegation is key. Quite often we don't do this for very reasons, not believing people will do a great job or not having enough confidence in the teams. But this is something that is critical, and delegating more things can free up much more time for doing other things that are more important. The third part is to organize these next actions and the projects, and there are 4 placeholders together with the calendar. Calendar is for specific time actions, and then the 4 placeholders are a list for the different projects, which are the things that we committed to. Next action list to do as soon as possible. Things that we're waiting for that we delegated to others. And then a list for things we might potentially want to do in the future, but not quite yet. So these are the 5 lists or placeholders. Calendar is one, and the other 4 are the projects, actions, waiting for, and one day maybe lists. For those lists to remain current and help us get through, they have to remain up to date. And that may not be as easy as it seems. There is the daily review, which mainly focuses on the calendar and the action list that we've already created. But what's most important is doing the weekly review, in which we empty all our in-basket and the things we wanted to do, and then review all the next actions, the calendars, the waiting for, the projects, and even getting creative for things we might do in the future. And of course, once in a while, at longer time intervals, it's important to do a bigger picture. What are the next things, big things that I would like to do in my work and my life? And last but not least, it is after doing all this process, we have several next things to do. And those then can be done as soon as possible, choosing on the context, how much time we have, how energetic we feel, and the priority of it. Of course, priorities should be a key part, but if we don't have enough energy, being able to do something is better not being able to do anything. David Allen preaches the bottom-up approach, which is we want to clean our immediate things, the small little things that pull our attention, and by doing that, that frees mental capacity to focus on the important things and the big things, rather than going from the other way around, thinking big picture, but then missing the day-to-day operations that may make us get out of control. So part of the process of doing all this prioritization is to decide what are the important topics, so that the ones that are less important, projects, topics, things to do, can be eliminated, so freeing time for the really important things. These are some general thoughts. It's best to start the day with the big tasks and start the day early. Being up early in the morning gives you much more free time. Most people are not up, which means there are less interruptions. I think it's ideal if email is not checked until noon, freeing up some time when we're most creative and well-rested doing the bigger projects. Having good habits done over time will matter. Exercising 1 hour a day provide extremely valuable results over the long term. We don't expect to find what we want in life just as an divine inspiration. The way to find out what really makes us passionate about is to try different things and then see which one of those we are most passionate about. Writing things down is critical. There's one concern when I talk to people and ask them to do something and no one writes it down, because our brain is not very good at holding things. That's what David Allen preaches, and I agree wholeheartedly with that. So writing things down, ideas, things to do, and then emptying it and putting it in a master list, that's critical to not missing things and feeling in control. We don't have to be perfect. Doing a project well enough is much better and time efficient than trying to do everything perfect. The 2-minute rule for next action is also very useful. If something can be done in 2 minutes, get it done. And we should not forget that by doing things and getting better and better, then we are going to be asked to do many more things. And as a result, the better that you get, the better that you should better get. That's David Allen's also premise, which is important for the future. So in summary, there is only so much time during the day. And the two key components of time management, in my opinion, are number one, to get more effective, create the systems yourself that you can get things done in less time, but also do less things, but do the things that are most important. This is something that doesn't stop. It's a lifelong process. And one way to learn it the best is to actually teach it to your family or your work colleagues. That's the best way to understand it and apply it best. These are my favorite references in terms of what is the thing to do. Tuesdays with Maury and the last lecture about how to doing it, the getting things done, and the 7 habits. Thank you.